How high will they go? We're talking both reservoirs and river levels as we continue to track our atmospheric rivers hitting Northern California. You can see the moisture still streaming in even at this hour after multiple thunderstorms rippling through Saturday. We've had a few isolated thunderstorms as well for today and snow levels that have been fluctuating. The key here is that our snow levels have started to come down. That's going to reduce some of the runoff that's coming in through the lower elevations, but still looking at a lot of rain falling at places that we saw feet of snow last week. Pollock Pines, Forest Hill, Grass Valley, all of those places had feet of snow, rain on top of it for 2 solid days. And so all of that is running downstream. Now you can see the snow line here is at least at about 5,500 to 6,500 feet. And we expect that to stay through tonight into early tomorrow morning. Still tracking a few thunderstorms again, especially through the mother lode, some snow in the higher elevations. But yesterday, a confirmed tornado at Tuttletown. That's in Tuolumne County. And EF1, National Weather Service, saying at about 2:52 in the afternoon yesterday, we had peak winds at 90 miles per hour doing the assessment and marking it as an EF1 tornado yesterday. As far as total rainfall, just since midnight on our Sunday, about 1/4 of an inch to over an inch of rain. You can really see where we had those isolated cells hanging over pockets of the Central Valley, including Stockton with over an inch of rain, Sonora with over an inch as well, Placerville, Auburn closing in at about 3/10 of an inch of rain to about 1/4 of an inch. Had some heavy downpours across the coast as well. San Francisco over 1/2 inch of rain. Now, because of the runoff, keep in mind, in the Sierra, we still have some low-lying elevations. So even though most of the rain is going to run its way westward in through the valley and the foothills, we still have some places that those culverts or even some drainage areas are covered by snow. Rainfall making it very difficult to clear the roadways and some low-lying areas. So the impacts include continued snow melt, rises on creeks and streams, and then flooding on low-lying areas. That's going to continue through our Sunday evening. Flood watch will continue through Wednesday morning throughout most of the region. And again, we're going to see more runoff coming in. Also flooded roadways, rises on rivers, creeks, and streams. So we're still in the first phase of what will be at least 2 atmospheric rivers to hit us in this sequence of storms. Close to 1/10 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch of rain down low for the valley through tomorrow. We'll see about 1/2 an inch of rain or so for the foothills and additional snowfall coming in. Again, the snow line is starting to drop. Good news for the runoff, not seeing quite as much, but that means more problems on those Sierra roadways, which could encounter chain controls, road closures, and more issues with travel delays. This is going to be a big plume of moisture continuing to push in from the Pacific. This is another warm storm brewing out here, and there's very little break between these with more fluctuating snow levels. So again, tonight, we're basically looking at about 6,000 to 6,500 feet for that snow level. That will be below the passes. Tomorrow, we're going to keep it roughly about that elevation. Now on Tuesday, as the warmer part of that storm starts to roll through, we once again see that snow line pushing up. Right now, it looks like it's going to be roughly about the pass level. More issues for Sierra roads, but then it comes crashing down to about 4,500 to 5,000 feet. The key here for anybody that lives in the foothills, we don't see a lot of moisture associated with the storm by this point. So we're not looking at a long duration event of low elevation snow into our Wednesday. Could see a few flurries. That'll be about it. Unfortunately, the hazardous side of this, whenever we get that rain-snow mix up and down snow line and some strong winds, that's going to elevate the avalanche warning risk. And so we're right back to that avalanche warning through Monday morning. Avalanche warning through Monday morning, I should say. Large avalanches possible. We've seen periods of closures on roads just because they're doing avalanche control or they've had some small slides. That will again be a hazard Sunday night into Monday. Our winter storm warning with that second storm right on the heels of the current one. We're going to keep that winter storm warning in effect until Wednesday afternoon with up to 6 feet of new snow. But again, that snow line is going to be coming and going, so not everybody's going to see quite that much snow. Major travel impacts, and one of the key things is to have an emergency kit just in case you do get caught in one of those snow lines that starts to come down the hill. They close the road, and then you're stuck on one of those Sierra roadways for hours at a time. The rain showers kind of tapering off as we head into our Sunday night and Monday morning. We'll see periods of some light showers, but the big stuff is yet to come. You can see it here, the yellow, the orange, there are even pockets of some red in there. By Tuesday morning, this next atmospheric river is going to come roaring through here Monday night into Tuesday. And this one is a little bit different. The reason why? We've got winds associated with it. We still have a risk of some thunderstorms for Monday, so some small hail, heavy downpours, lightning, even some small funnel clouds possible as well. We'll track that. Then we get right into that next storm. Here's a look at some of the areas that will be affected by the winds, including a high wind warning along the coast. Travel to the Bay Area is going to be very difficult, damaging winds, sustained winds at 20 to 40 miles per hour, gusts at about 55 to 70 miles per hour. Tree and power concerns will continue to be elevated. That'll start up Monday evening and last through much of Wednesday. As we move our way eastward through the valley and parts of the foothills, we have a high wind watch that starts up Monday evening, will last through Tuesday evening. Wind gusts a little bit lower the way that things are playing out right now at about 45 to 60 miles per hour, but they're going to be higher than this first atmospheric river that rolled through this week. So our tree and power concerns will continue to be an issue. And the other concern is the saturated ground. So hopefully those tree roots are strong, because as we saw with that New Year's Eve storm and then the one that followed directly after that, we saw multiple trees having issues throughout the valley. So we'll have to watch tree concerns especially. Here's a look at the wind projections right now. By Tuesday morning, this is when we really see some problems. And unfortunately, this is right during the morning commute. So we see strong winds throughout the valley, the foothills, gusting at times to about 40 to 45 miles per hour. We'll have periods of higher gusts right after that. And then things will start to quiet down through the evening, at least through the valley. They're going to hang on for the coast a little bit longer, and for the Sierra, where we can see gusts at about 100 miles per hour. Excessive rainfall still in the forecast Monday into Tuesday. You can see kind of this stretch here right through the foothills and the northwest coast, which has actually not benefited as much from the recent storms as, say, the Central Valley. So we are going to see a little shift in that weather pattern Monday into Tuesday. Now, Tuesday to Wednesday, that system starts to slide its way south. And so the foothills of the Sierra Nevada will start to be more so affected with moderate risk for excessive rainfall, which will then lead again back to more runoff with the snow melt and just everything running downstream. Gravity takes it right through the floodplain, which we call the Central Valley of California. Here's a look at where things started with our atmospheric rivers earlier in the year. To wrap up the winter season, we had one exceptional atmospheric river that came blasting through December 27th. And that really opened up the storm door. That was the first one that came through and took us right through the end of December. So at that point, then we had 4 strong, 4 moderate, and you can see how it all started to slide its way through more so of California than the California-Oregon border. And that's what's got us into a very saturated position right now. Given that, so let's say we had 9 atmospheric rivers in our winter season. Today is number 10. We've got 11 on the way, 12 potentially a little bit deeper into the forecast. So this will be 12 atmospheric rivers that we've been tracking. The number 12 one, a little bit more uncertainty with that, just because it's a little bit farther out. So you can see kind of with the shaded colors here, the certainty forecast, and we're a little bit less certain about that one. But the one, number 11, that will hit us Monday into Tuesday, that is coming together. This is what things looked like last year. So just to put it into perspective, we usually see a lot of atmospheric rivers that hit us. Last year for our season, October 24th is when we opened things up. It just so happened that we got a break in November, and then December, we had a bunch of atmospheric rivers that came through and some cold storms, and then everything shut down. And that's what got us into the 3rd year of drought. This year has not played out the same. Instead, we started off with a very hydrologic position right before our first atmospheric river started to come through. And fast forward to where we are by March, things are very saturated, and that's what's leading to so much runoff and the potential for more flooding. Again, because we've got another in line here brewing in the Pacific, just kind of looking at it from a satellite perspective here. This is what's been going through for our weekend storm, causing a lot of trouble, not only with severe weather, but also flooding. When we look at how severe things are, what's the category that we're going to be looking at on a scale for atmospheric rivers? The one that's been rippling through for today at times was kind of in that extreme and strong category, and then kind of fluctuated right here between moderate and weak. And then we start to look ahead to our next storm systems, and we're still going to be tracking the potential for what kind of category they'll be in. But right now it is looking like they're going to be below that AR3. Mostly beneficial, but also hazardous. So that's kind of where we're going to be putting the next one here, potentially into that green AR2 category. Our forecast monitoring for our river systems, we've continued to add with each day more and more rivers that are going to be above flood stage. So we're now up to 15. Again, all that runoff contributing to higher river levels downstream. And so a couple of these have been really approaching some dangerous conditions with some flooding. Tuolumne River at Modesto by Wednesday, we're looking at its crest now. That's why we have that flood watch in effect also through Wednesday morning. That kind of gives you some perspective on timing for when we see the delayed effect of everything running downhill. Merced River at Stevenson, that crest is also climbing by the time we get into Wednesday. So we're kind of in that flood stage by Tuesday and then reaching possibly a record high at Stevenson. That one is certainly one to be tracked. Cosumnes River at McConnell also into Wednesday, looking at that flood stage, could reach it as high as Tuesday. It's just that we see the crest by Wednesday morning. Cosumnes River at Michigan Bar, that's going to be over towards Wilton by Tuesday, midday, expected to hit that flood stage, cresting then by the time we get to late Tuesday into early Wednesday. Also, McCullough River at Benson's Ferry. This is one that we'll be watching a little bit later into the evening on Wednesday. Early Thursday is when it crests. And finally, I do want to look at Sacramento River at I Street Bridge. Now, this is one that we like to watch, not so much because it's at monitoring stage, but because at a certain point they would open up the Sacramento Weir. A lot of people were wondering last time with the round of atmospheric rivers that rolled through if the Weir would be open. Now, for anybody that's not familiar with our Weir system in the valley, what this is it's along the Sacramento River. So here's the Sacramento River, and you see all these weirs that are placed on it. Many of them are free flowing. So what will happen is when the Sacramento River gets to a certain point, those weirs just start flowing, and it goes into areas that are expected to flood and to absorb that water in mostly beneficial areas. So this is water that can be used. It percolates underground, or it's used in a floodplain, perhaps for migratory birds or rice fields, things like that. Once we get down to the Sacramento Weir, that is the only one that is manually operated. Now, keep in mind that Weir is very close to a largely populated area of downtown Sacramento. They will hand crank those gates open. So they literally hand crank the gates open. And depending on how much water they need to let out, it then flows freely into the Yolo bypass, and we'll see that right along I-80 heading into San Francisco, out of Sacramento over to San Francisco. That's where you see some of that water flowing. Again, this is all to prevent catastrophic flooding in a highly populated area. That's why we watch the Sacramento Weir opening the gates so closely. Right now, everything's expected to free flow, nothing manually opening. The other issue that we have is the reservoir levels. Now, many of these reservoirs hold water that can then be released for not only water supply, but also flood control. Folsom is one that is mainly going to be for flood control. And you can see the huge spike that it had in inflow. And then as those releases started to happen, and it is a powerful rush of water coming out of that reservoir, we start to see those levels drop. Next, we'll look at Oroville, which opened its spillway, that new spillway after the 2017 incident. So they opened it in 2019 and allowed water to freely flow over that. And as we headed into late last week, they opened it for the second time since they had that construction. And you can see we're still looking at water levels going up. This is a much larger reservoir. It can take a lot more water into it. Shasta, also some great rises on Shasta. You can see the spike here. They are doing periodic releases from Shasta. But overall, Shasta can take a ton of water. It's our biggest reservoir in California. And right now it's 63% full. So they can take in a lot more water. It is a reservoir that is rain driven, not snowmelt driven. And that's why sometimes we don't see that urgency to get all that water out so quickly, because we don't have the snowmelt to contend with later on in the season. So we don't have necessarily as much of a delayed effect as, say, Oroville and Folsom, which are going to have more snowmelt coming into it. And right now, those two are at 58 to 76% full. Above average, but still, we have some capacity. Here's a look at some of our Central Valley reservoirs, and we're at about 50 to 85% full. New Melones, we're a little bit below historic average, but Don Pedro, San Luis, we're above historic average. Bottom line there, we've got water ready to take us through the dry season. The latest media messages coming from the Department of Water Resources and the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation were saying that all of these water releases, we know we hate to see that water go, but it is to make room for runoff and prevent flooding in the valley. This will also be allowed to be used for groundwater recharge. The Mendota Pool can be released, meaning we can let that water go. And many farmers and some other agencies are then using that water, letting it sit on the ground. It seeps underneath the ground and recharges the groundwater, which is greatly needed because until we get out of the groundwater drought issue, it's likely that we'll continue in drought in California. Plus, the Delta pumps, max discharge 9,500 cubic feet per second on Friday. So we get that water moving into the California aqueduct and pump it down to Southern California. Plenty of water still to come into these reservoirs, too. Again, the ones that are snow melt driven. We're at roughly about 85 to over 200% of average as of this date. But since we're getting so close to that April 1st date, those numbers are going to quickly align here, and they're going to seem a little bit less apart. Earlier in the season, we would see these huge numbers for average to date, and then percent of average for April 1st was a little bit different. But now those two numbers are going to come closer together here as we are about 15 days away from when we historically see the snow stop and the melting begin. And we're still above historical averages for the Southern Sierra, still above that 1982-83 max. And again, we have more coming in. But this is not expected to be a repeat of 1997. We want to make that really clear. I know I've been hammering that the past couple of times, but it bears repeating just because that was one of those situations that was historic, catastrophic, and we are not expecting that. And primarily because we have some breaks in our systems. But we will see the impacts on roads, rivers, and creeks. Again, everything's saturated, everything's going to melt, and the snow melt still happening below 5,000 feet where we had feet of snow to melt there. Looking at our timeline, tomorrow morning we still have some rain, but here you can see the depth of this moisture that is starting to move our way. This is what's due in early Tuesday. So we not only have the rain, but we have the wind. We already talked about the wind. So combine those two factors, it is going to be a rather dangerous morning commute, the way that things are timing out right now. Snow will be falling in the Sierra, but that snow line actually goes up through the day and then will come crashing down on Wednesday. But like I said, there's just not a whole lot of moisture left at this point. We still have a pretty active Pacific going on, and we're not quite done yet. We have more rain and snow in the forecast even after number 11 atmospheric river rolls through. But we'll find major impacts through our Wednesday for the Sierra. Chain controls, reduced visibility, travel delays. Some of the bigger snow totals will be found at Carson, Ebbets, and Sonora passes with about 48 to 60 inches of snow. Lassen closing in on about 5 to 6 feet of snow. Rainfall impressive as well. Still looking at major impacts through the middle of the week. Roadway flooding, stream and river flooding, and also mud and rock slide risk. About 1 inch to 2 inches from San Francisco through Stockton and Modesto. Sacramento with about 2 to 3 inches of rain just from storm system number 11. And then Grass Valley, Sonora also with about 4 to 7.5 inches of rain. We'll see a mix still for South Lake Tahoe with about 2 to 3 inches of rain. So a likely wetter scenario shaping up for us deep into March. It is definitely a miracle March if you're looking at restoring all of our water tables and everything water in California. The Sierra gets a break on Thursday, Friday. Now we're going to see that next storm starting to pop up on Friday later in the day for us. So for St. Patrick's Day, if you are trying to make those plans, just be aware the rain does return, and that takes us through the upcoming weekend as well as the first day of spring.